What do Disney World and a mass murder site have in common? Both bring in billions of dollars for their owners. Thousands of families visit Discovery Kingdom Amusement Park in Concord, California, every weekend, unaware that they are paying money to the heirs of child murderers. Here, 28 years ago, adults made a simple business decision: save $75,000 on child safety for the sake of corporate profits. On June 2, 1997, something more than a tragic accident happened here. At Waterworld Water Park on that day, 32 teenagers fell from a height of 40 feet, not because of an accidental collapse of the structure. They were victims of deliberate cost-cutting on safety, organized by one of the largest corporations in the entertainment industry. 28 years later, the survivors still wear neck braces and take painkillers. The official version blamed the children for breaking the rules, but the reality was much darker. Traces of negligence were covered up in a week. Key witnesses changed their testimony after meeting with corporate lawyers. The prosecutor who refused to bring criminal charges owned shares in the very company responsible for the tragedy. Justice was buried as deep as 17-year-old Kimby Giotti. But the truth has a habit of coming to the surface. Kimby Giotti woke up that morning with a sense of anticipation. For the valedictorian, the trip to the water park was a long-awaited break before exams. At 17, she was already planning to go to college and dreamed of becoming like her mother, Victoria Nelson. Her friends knew Kimby as the kindest girl in school, who would always support and listen to them. On the bus, she sat next to Alinda Franco, her best friend since childhood. Alinda was the life of the party, energetic and cheerful, planning to go to college and pursue a career that would help people. The girls discussed their upcoming graduation, outfits, and plans for the summer. They had their whole lives ahead of them. When the bus pulled up to Waterworld, the mood was festive. 145 graduates could finally relax after a stressful school year. Many were seeing each other for the last time before going to different colleges and cities. The day was supposed to be remembered as a farewell to a carefree childhood. None of the teenagers knew that Premier Parks considered them a potential threat to profits, that the tradition of blocking the slides had been known to management for several years, that cutting corners on extra lifeguards and reinforced structures was about to turn into a disaster. The bonsai slide towered over the water park as a symbol of modern entertainment technology. 40 feet high, with graceful curves and a polymer structure, it promised adrenaline and safe fun. The Canadian company Whitewater West Industries designed it as a standard model from its catalog for $200,000. When designing it, engineers were aware of the practice of bottlenecks, where teenagers would slide down the slides in large groups. This tradition was widespread in water parks across America. However, the calculations were based on a maximum of 1 person with a maximum capacity of 10. A reinforced version capable of supporting the weight of 30 people would have cost $50,000 more. Premier Parks chose the cheapest option. Kieran Burke's company was building an entertainment empire by buying up parks across the country, and every dollar saved increased shareholder profits. The strength of the materials, the reliability of the fastenings, the number of support structures, everything was calculated to the minimum. When Bonsai Pipeline was installed at Waterworld, the local authorities in Concord did not conduct any independent inspections. Until 1997, California had a self-regulation system in place. Companies were responsible for the safety of their own attractions. Premier Parks conducted daily inspections by its own employees and reported on the condition of the equipment. Corporate greed versus children's lives? The choice was made long before that fateful day. The day was going perfectly until 3:30 p.m. The teenagers had spent 6 hours at the water park, riding slides, swimming in pools, enjoying their last school holiday. Roger Ashlock, assistant principal and trip supervisor, relaxed as he watched his charges. Of the 8 adult supervisors accompanying the 145 students, Most were already gathering their belongings. The announcement over the loudspeaker sounded like a signal to action. Napa, high school students, please return to the buses. But instead of obediently moving toward the exit, dozens of teenagers rushed to the bonsai pipeline. The tradition of capping had to be completed. The last mass descent before heading home. Ashlock not only knew about this tradition, but had been preparing the students for months to break the record. At school assemblies, he talked about previous achievements. 76 people in 1996 at Manteca water slides. If you get caught banning and kicked out of the park, that's okay, he told the students. This is a graduation trip. We don't want to ruin your fun. The fateful decision was made not by a teenager, but by an adult trusted by parents. 8 chaperones to supervise 145 excited graduates was clearly not enough. The school administration skimped on safety, just as Premier Park skimped on the construction of the slide. When the crowd of students ran toward the bonsai pipeline, the system failed at every level simultaneously. At 3:32 p.m., the first students reached the top of the 40-foot bonsai pipeline tower. Rescue worker Mike Davis tried to stop them. He blew his whistle, shouted about rule violations, and called park security on his radio. It was one man against 30 excited teenagers eager to set a record. The students ignored the warnings. The first climbed the slide and braced himself, digging his feet into the walls of the structure. Behind him came the second, third, 10th. Catherine Gelati, standing on the platform, saw kids climbing one after another more and more. Alinda Franco and Kimby Giotti found themselves in the middle of this human chain. About 33 people gathered on the 20-foot section of the slide, 3 times the estimated load. The fiberglass structure, designed for a maximum of 10 people, was at its limit. The mounting bolts began to bend under the weight of nearly a ton of human bodies. At 3:35 p.m., there was a loud crack. "The sound of cracking plastic is forever etched in my memory," Alinda Franco later recalled. The section of the slide burst open like a cardboard box. The 20-foot section of the structure collapsed, taking 33 teenagers with it. Bodies fell onto concrete walkways, flower beds, and metal supports for other rides. Kimby Giotti hit her head on a wooden pole and suffered fatal brain injuries. Alinda broke her neck but survived. 32 teenagers with broken bones, spinal injuries, and internal bleeding lay among the wreckage of what had once been a fun slide. The water in the pool below was stained red with blood. Children's cries of pain mingled with the sounds of approaching sirens. In 3 minutes, the holiday turned into hell. 2 hours after the disaster, investigators from the city of Concord and independent experts arrived at Waterworld. Mayor Bill McManigal promised to spend as much time and money as necessary to determine the cause of the tragedy. But from the outset, the investigation followed a script that was convenient for Premier Parks. The city hired an engineering firm that regularly received contracts from the same insurance company that covered Premier Parks' risks. Independent expert James Collins quickly concluded that the slide met standards and that the collapse was caused by a load exceeding the maximum capacity by 4 times. The students themselves were to blame for violating safety rules. But documents seized from Premier Parks' offices told a different story. Internal correspondence from 1995 to 1996 mentioned the problem of slide blockages at other parks owned by the company. Managers were aware of the tradition of mass descents, but considered the installation of additional barriers an unjustified expense. The daily inspection logs for Bonsai Pipeline were found to be filled out as a formality. The entry, "Slide in good working order," was repeated day after day without specifying which elements had been checked. Technician Robert Miller later admitted to lawyers that the inspection usually took 5 minutes instead of the required hour. The most damning evidence was a video recording from the park's surveillance cameras. Archival footage showed 3 previous attempts to block the Bonsai Pipeline in May 1997. Rescuers stopped students from other schools when 15 to 20 people gathered on the slide. But park management did not take any measures to prevent repeat violations. Documents on staff training revealed another scandal. Water park rescuers underwent an 8-hour training course instead of the standard 40 hours. The training program did not include procedures for dealing with mass violations of the rules. Mike Davis, a lifeguard at Banzai Pipeline, was hired after only 2 days of training. The Canadian company Whitewater West offered reinforced versions of its slides for parks with high visitor numbers. Additional supports and barriers cost $75,000, but Premier Parks rejected these options to save money. Investigators also found that the name of the water park's local manager, David Stone, was systematically omitted from all official reports. Stone, who made key decisions about park safety, suddenly fell ill and became unavailable to testify. His contract with Premier Parks was terminated a week after the tragedy at his own request. The moment of revelation came when investigators examined Premier Parks' financial documents for 1995 to 1997. Safety savings amounted to $2.3 million across the company's entire park network. This money went to bonuses for top managers, including $500,000 personally to Kieran Burke. Children's lives became an expense item on balance sheets. The 1997 safety system in California was based on trust in companies to regulate themselves. The state labor department had no authority to inspect attractions, and local authorities relied on the good faith of operators. Premier Parks reported on safety to its own insurer, which received millions of dollars in premiums from the same company. The Banzai Pipeline slide had not undergone independent strength testing since it was installed in 1995. The ride manufacturer, Whitewater, conducted factory tests with one person. Then the structure was transported to California and assembled without additional inspections. The strength of all structural elements was accepted on the basis of Canadian certificates. The Water Parks Rescue Service consisted of 12 people for 15 attractions. College students working summer jobs for $8 an hour were responsible for the safety of thousands of visitors. Mike Davis, 19, was hired as a lifeguard at Banzai Pipeline after a 2-day training course and a 20-question written test. When the system failed on June 2nd, there was no need to look for someone to blame. They were sitting on the board of directors of Premier Parks, in the offices of Concord officials, and in the offices of insurance companies. Everyone knew the risks, but everyone assumed that someone else was responsible. 48 hours after the tragedy, the cleanup operation began. Bill McManigal, mayor of Concord, commissioned an investigation by Peterson Engineering, an engineering firm that had received municipal contracts worth $2 million a year for 5 years in a row. The company's chief engineer, James Collins, had previously worked as a consultant for Premier Parks insurer. The families of the victims were offered emergency assistance of $25,000 in exchange for not commenting to the press. Victoria Nelson, mother of the deceased Kimby, received an offer of $500,000 to sign a non-disclosure agreement. "They wanted to buy my silence while the trail was still warm," she later recalled. Key witnesses began changing their testimony after meeting with Premier Parks lawyers. Technician Robert Miller initially admitted to performing routine checks on the ride, but a week later claimed that it had undergone thorough daily inspections. Lifeguard Mike Davis got a job at Six Flags for $50,000 a year and stopped answering investigators' calls. Even children were pressured. Student Catherine Gelati recounted how park representatives came to her home asking her to remember the events more accurately. The parents of several victims received anonymous calls threatening legal action for defamation of an honest company. Corruption reached the Contra Costa County District Attorney's office. James Lansing, the district attorney, refused to file criminal charges against Premier Parks 48 hours after receiving the investigation materials. His explanation: insufficient evidence of criminal intent. Lansing owned $150,000 worth of Premier Parks stock. Victoria Nelson was the only one who openly challenged the system. She hired a private investigator to follow officials and discovered regular meetings between Mayor McManigal and Premier Parks lobbyists at the Concord Pavilion restaurant. The bills were paid with a corporate credit card. When Nelson succeeded in getting a bill on mandatory amusement park inspections before the state court, a full-scale campaign was launched against her. A private investigator hired by unknown individuals followed her home. The bank where Victoria worked received customer complaints about her professionalism. Her car was vandalized twice. The amusement park lobby group spent $300,000 a month to oppose reforms in California. Congressmen received invitations to VIP boxes at Disney World and Universal Studios. Their children were given internships at amusement parks with a salary of $5,000 a month. The most cynical part of the cover-up operation was the attempt to shift the blame onto the victims. Premier Parks lawyers hired psychologist Richard Spencer to assess teenagers' propensity for risky behavior. The conclusion was that Napa High students knowingly took risks, ignoring obvious warnings. The Napa Valley School District, which had initially supported the families, suddenly changed its position. Roger Ashlock was granted administrative leave to recover from stress with his $75,000 annual salary intact. Documents about his role in promoting the bottling tradition disappeared from school archives. The system protected the system. The $55 billion entertainment industry could not allow one tragedy to destroy its lucrative self-regulatory scheme. Every official, prosecutor, and expert knew their role in this charade. Victoria Nelson fought alone against an army of lawyers, lobbyists, and corrupt officials. But the most disgusting thing was the silence of her colleagues. Other families of victims, having received compensation, refused to support Nelson's fight for justice. "We want to forget and move on," they said. The system bought not only officials, but also the silence of the victims. Prosecutor James Lansing made his decision in 48 hours. No one would be charged with a crime for the death of Kimby Galati and the injuries of 32 teenagers. "There is insufficient evidence of gross negligence," he told reporters on June 4, 1997. Yet the same documents detailing fake inspections and safety cost-cutting became the basis for civil lawsuits seeking millions of dollars in damages. The double standards of the American justice system were laid bare with cynical candor. Judge Margaret O'Connor, presiding over the civil case, called Premier Parks' actions obvious negligence bordering on criminal. But criminal prosecutors continued to insist that no crime had been committed. Corporations pay money, people go to jail. This rule did not work the other way around. Compensation was distributed according to a cruel arithmetic of human suffering. The Kimberly Ghiatti family received $1.7 million for the death of their daughter. Alinda Franco, who broke her neck and was condemned to a lifetime of pain, received $180,000. A student with a shattered spine received $120,000. Broken arms and legs were valued at $50,000 each. 24 families signed non-disclosure agreements in exchange for a total of $4 million. Premier Parks spent $8 million on lawyers, twice as much as it paid to the victims. Insurance companies covered all expenses by passing them on to other customers' premiums. None of the executives lost a cent of their own money. The most disgusting argument was the defense's claim of contributory negligence on the part of the students. Attorney Kevin Murphy argued in court, these teenagers knowingly broke the rules, ignored the lifeguards' warnings, and created a dangerous situation themselves. 17-year-olds were accused of being responsible for their own deaths and injuries. Roger Ashlock, who encouraged the students to set a record of 76 people, escaped any responsibility. The school district paid him $25,000 in compensation for moral damages and granted him early retirement. Kieran Burke received a $2 million bonus in 1998 for successful crisis management. Justice turned out to be a commodity that could be bought for the right price. Corporate lawyers at $1,000 an hour against overworked prosecutors on a government salary. Private experts with the right conclusions against public servants with slashed budgets. The outcome was a foregone conclusion from the start. 2025. Alinda Franco, now Alinda Davis, puts on a neck brace and takes painkillers every morning. 28 years later, she still feels the effects of her fall from the bonsai pipeline. Every June 2nd, she sends a bouquet of pink flowers, Kimby's favorite color, to the Gayati family. "The memory of my friend helps me live," she says. Kieran Burke owns a $15 million penthouse in Manhattan and a $20 million yacht. After leaving Premier Parks in 2005, he founded an investment company specializing in the entertainment industry. His fortune is estimated at $400 million. In a 2020 interview with Forbes, he never mentioned the Waterworld tragedy. The 1998 Amusement Ride Safety Act, passed after the tragedy, was watered down by lobbyists. Instead of annual inspections, parks are inspected once every 3 years. Accident reports are only required for hospitalizations lasting more than 24 hours. The self-regulatory system remains unchanged. Since 1997, 23 people have died in American water parks. Most of the victims are teenagers and children. Each time, the cause is cited as violation of visitor rules or tragic accident. No criminal cases are brought. Families receive compensation and sign non-disclosure agreements. Victoria Nelson continues her fight at the age of 68. Her nonprofit organization, Safety First Parks, has succeeded in tightening regulations in 12 states, but there is still no federal law. Kimby is dead, but her death can save other children, she repeats at every congressional hearing. The water park has been replaced by a beautiful amusement park with dolphins and rides. Tourists take pictures, children laugh, parents buy souvenirs. There is no memorial plaque. Six Flags management believes that mentioning the tragedy would spoil the family atmosphere. The question remains, how many more children must die before corporate killers face real punishment? As long as justice is sold and human lives are valued in dollars, the system will protect the guilty and blame the victims. Alinda wears a neck brace, and Kieran Burke buys new yachts. That is the price of impunity in America.